Welcome to the Talking Classics podcast.
A lot of people of my sort of generation grew up making airfix kits, so when I found out about here and retired, wanted something to do, it was absolutely ideal.
We are here in the Lightning Building at the Bentwaters Cold War Museum, and I am here with one of the restoration team for these beautiful aeroplanes you see behind me, Dennis Crow. So Dennis, please tell us what you are doing here in this beautiful hangar.
Basically preserving Cold War aeroplanes for the future generations to be able to see. They're now becoming quite rare, and a lot of work needs to go into preserving them for long-term future.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I can see from what's around me that you guys are doing an absolutely beautiful job. So Dennis, what I want to know, for starters, is how did you get into doing this? What made you realise that you wanted to come and restore these beautiful old planes?
Well, just speaking for myself as an ex-engineer, when I retired, I was looking for something to work on. It could have been steam engines or whatever, classic cars even. But I came here on a visit one day. I was involved with Woodbridge ATC. They had a big open day here. And when I walked into the museum compound, I saw this Lightning in pieces on the ground. And I have quite an affinity with Lightnings because I used to see these flying when I was a boy. So I immediately found the chairman of the museum and said, I want to join, please, and I want to restore this. And that's really how it started.
Amazing. So did you have to have any other qualifications than just being an engineer? Were you an engineer on...
No, I had no background on aero engineering, as do none of us here. But we've all got engineering skills, either mechanical. I'm an electronic engineer. And really, it's usually common sense.
Yeah.
You know, there's always information around that you can find. I think, as I told you before in the past, if in doubt, don't. Do your research and then you can start on the project.
Definitely. So you said you absolutely love the Lightning, which is behind me, because you used to see them flying. So where did you see them flying? What was your affinity with them?
My father was in the RAF, and we were fortunate to be out in Singapore in the 60s, late 60s. And while I was out there, 74 Squadron Lightnings came out to join the base there. So I used to see these flying every day.
Yeah.
Very noisy, very spectacular though. And that's really how I came to know all about Lightnings. Really.
You fell in love with them?
Fell in love with them, yes.
Yeah. So this is kind of you mentioned it's your hobby, it's a kind of labour of love. So it takes a long time to restore these aeroplanes, and you guys are doing it in your spare time, really. So you must really, really love it.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I would spend many hours if I was allowed. But we do about 3 days.
3 days a week?
3 days a week. One of those days is now slightly compromised, that we've now opened up the HAS to visits, so people can come now and see the restoration work ongoing.
And is that why you guys do it? So these beautiful planes are kind of there for future generations to see and enjoy and learn the history behind?
Correct, correct. But also for us, it's great because there's 4 or 5 of us now working here, and it's the camaraderie of working together. We're all engineers. We've known each other in the past. Yeah. And it just works very well. One of the problems when you go into retirement for a lot of people can be loneliness, because you're suddenly on your own, having worked in a big corporate environment. We just carry on, you know. And we have all the normal banter you'd expect. If you cock up, you know about it.
So the tea breaks are very important.
They're very important, yes.
As always, yes. We love our tea breaks as well at Bridge Classic Cars.
It could also affect your bonus as well, you know. So.
Also, you mentioned earlier that in the team you have people who have kind of specialists, like, for example, you did the electronical engineering, and some of your other team members have different specialities. Correct. So how does that come into play in the work environment?
Well, it works very well because I think, as I said before, each aircraft has got its own project manager now. Yes. But we all swap and operate between all the aircraft for our particular skills that we've got. So as I said, I'm electronics. Rob, sitting over there, is also electronic guy, but he also does some fantastic woodwork, which you've seen here. Amazing. And we have to do a lot of wooden construction to hold frames in place, to lift things. Right. One of the other colleagues who I mentioned, who's not here today, is our aviation historian, Ian White, He's brilliant at painting, so a lot of the cockpit that you've just seen, and the bulkhead and all the hydraulic instruments, that's all been hand painted.
Wow.
So he used to take stuff home and paint them up, bring them back in ready for restoration work. So
that is amazing, and he must have an extremely steady hand, because some of the numbers and letters in there are tiny.
I wouldn't have the patience to do it.
Oh my goodness.
And the other colleague we mentioned, Jeff, he's a mechanical engineer, and he's done things like building the ladder, does all the hydraulics, put all the hydraulic pump systems in to drive the canopy and the air brakes and stuff. So it works very, very well, you know, as a team.
So at the moment, which one are you project manager for?
The Lightning.
The Lightning.
Also the Harrier, which is in the compound.
Ah, I see. Amazing.
Rob's for the Hawker Hunter and the A10. Jeff's going to be the Phantom, which is going to come in here when this T-33 goes out.
Right.
Ian's the Meteor at the moment.
Amazing. And you mentioned before that sometimes when you've got new aircrafts coming in, it can be really tricky kind of making the workshop, everything fit in.
At the moment, we're just about to re-manoeuvre aircraft around in here.
Yeah.
The Lightning will now stay as a permanent exhibit here once it's all sprayed up. So that's stuck there. But we need to move it back. The T-33 that you've just been looking at just now, that's going to go out within the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
Fully finished and sprayed up to go on display. And then we're going to bring the Phantom in. But the Phantom is a big plane and you need a lot of space, so it's got to go in here.
Amazing. Well, it is so cool, and it must be so much fun to be around these kind of vehicles a lot of the time and learn the history about it. You mentioned on the Lightning that you've got actual notes from the pilot.
I have, yes, the pilot's log. Pilot who flew this 5 times in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, we haven't said this on the talk, but this was an export model to Saudi Arabia that was out there.
Right, so you've got the actual notes from the pilot. I absolutely love it.
And we've also had several visits from key Lightning pilots who've come and seen it and had a look at it.
Amazing.
Brought back memories for them.
I bet they were itching to get inside.
Definitely.
Did you let them have a go?
No.
Amazing.
Only I sit in there with a cup of coffee.
With a cup of coffee. Just take your time, have a nice relax inside, and look at all the amazing work that you've done surrounding you. It's fantastic. Well, thank you so much. It's just really amazing to kind of get insight to what you guys do and how you are bringing back these beautiful planes for future generations to come and explore and have a look round. So thank you.
Pleasure, thank you.
Amazing.
For me, I'd like to ask you a question. Do one more question if that's okay.
Yeah.
In terms of like the legacy of the base, what do you want this to turn into, or what's the larger purpose of restoring these planes?
Well, ultimately, no, I'm just thinking of the answer I want to give you first of all, because that's an interesting question. Obviously, it's as long as the museum stays, and we hope that will stay for forever. And the aircraft eventually, all these that are being restored, apart from this one here, will go out on display in the compound. And the sort of work that's going to go on there, again this year, if we're lucky, is to get a new concrete base across the front of the museum, and then the A10, this T-33, and the other aircraft you'll see over there, which is still in bits, which is an F-84, they will all go there fully on display.
Yeah. So is there, I guess the
End goal.
a lot of what I'm getting at is it to preserve the history of these vehicles, to make people, these airplanes, or is there anything else? Is there any additional motive, or the reason why I'm so passionate about these in particular is because it's something that links to my...
Well, they're all part of our Cold War history.
Yeah.
Anyone who studies the Cold War and is interested in aviation, then they'll know about these aeroplanes, so you can actually come and see them.
What's the legacy of this place?
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure what I mean by a legacy.
Well,
it's here for for as long as it can stay here, and the whole purpose is to show people these Cold War airplanes.
Yes,
really.
Well,
that's it.
And hopefully encourage some other people to come.
Yes. Rob, I might ask you that question.
You can do, because that's a really tough question that you've probably got as well. We're all well, not all. He's youngest. He's a boy. The rest of us are 74 plus. Who's going to take over when we finally can't climb up ladders anymore and all the rest of it? And trying to entice younger people to come in, because You don't have to have a direct affinity with aircraft, these old. It's if you're interested in engineering and the challenges in building. Anyone who's doing a degree in engineering, mechanical engineering or something, this would be a nice sideline thing to come and do. That's really what we're trying to aim at. Interestingly, just as a sideline, I had a guy come one day to see me on another matter, and he wanted to bring his son along to see this. So I showed him the Lightning, and he was fascinated. He contacted me several months later to say that his son was so impressed with this and got so excited and involved, he then went and did an aeronautical engineer at Cranfield. And I thought, fabulous.
Yeah.
You've got a young guy into engineering. And I will always try and encourage people to go into engineering of any sort, or science, it doesn't really matter. But,
Brilliant.
No, not at all.
it's all right.
I'm here with another engineer now. Now I'm here with Rob Spindley. So you are also an electronical engineer, but also do woodwork as well?
That's right. Yeah, I'm a telecoms design engineer, basically. I did an electronics degree.
Yeah.
And I knew Dennis through work. We worked in the same area for several years. And when I retired, he pestered me to come and help because he knew my background. He also knew I'd been interested in aeroplanes for a long time because I used to help with the local Air Training Corps squadron. And it seemed like a very good thing to do. And as you say, I do quite a lot of woodwork and things, so we all have specialisms here as well as doing general things. And I always seem to be the one that makes the various frames and things for the aircraft. So, for example, the T-33 that you've seen, the back half of that comes away from the front half in order that you can put the engine in and clean it. But obviously, you've got to support it. So I made a trolley that supported the back so it could slide off for the engine to go in and that sort of thing.
So all of your different jobs are really integral to the whole restoration of these airplanes.
They are, yes. I mean, there's some things that we all do. We can all sand down an aircraft so it's ready to paint.
Yeah.
But each of us has the little bit that maybe we do more often than other people, usually with help. And the thing we all always do is problem solving.
Yes.
Because if somebody can't quite see how something can work, can be done, we quite often, round a cup of tea, are discussing various ways in which it might be able to be done without damaging it and safely as well, of course. So yeah, we're all good at that sort of thing, and then do our individual little bits and pieces.
So you mentioned that Dennis got you to come over to the Cold War Museum to start working on the planes, but did you have an affinity with aeroplanes before you started?
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, like a lot of people of my sort of generation, grew up making airfix kits and things like that, so I'd always been interested in aeroplanes. I was in the Air Training Corps when I was young, so that interest in aeroplanes carried on, went to lots of air shows, things like that. For several years I helped at Duxford Museum, which was quite good, but it was a little bit too far to go from Ipswich all the time. So when I found out about here and retired, wanted something to do, it was absolutely ideal. So carry on the interest in the aeroplanes, the problem solving, keep your brain working when you're retired. It's very good.
Definitely. So what project are you kind of the lead for at the moment?
Well, I'm the project manager for the A10 and the Hunter aircraft, which are over in the compound. So that's really, because the aircraft are outside, they do start to deteriorate. The Hawker Hunter, for example, last year we took 40 gallons of water out of the cockpit because the rain had been seeping in. So I'm doing some work now to make sure it's sealed up properly so that doesn't happen. We have had covers made for all the aircraft that go over the cockpit, so that stopped the problem for now, but only when the cover's on. And we'd like to take the cover off during open days so people can see it. So we need to make sure it's waterproof. Little bits of painting need doing on them, even things like blowing up the tyres, because over the time the tyres go down and the aircraft sink. So just keeping that general things going.
Yeah, well, you mentioned earlier like how it takes such a long time to do an aircraft, and with what you said, I can understand why. So you were showing me this one. Oh, remind me of the name of this
The
one?
T-33.
The T-33. You were showing me all of the tiny screws
Yes.
that are in the aeroplane, and how over time, when they were stainless steel ones.
No, originally these are hold the fairings on the aircraft to make it nice and streamlined.
Yes.
When the previous museum that had that aircraft at Tangmere, down on the south coast, said we could have it, they had to take it to pieces. So they had to get the fairings off, but because all the screws that hold them on are steel, they'd all rusted. Yeah. So they all had to be drilled out, and drilling them out damages the captive nut that holds them in. So when we got the aircraft, the wings were put back on, but we had to drill out all the rivets that held all the captive nuts, put new ones in, and then we've put the fairings back on with stainless steel screws. So anybody in the future won't have the problem of having to drill them all out. But for example, that was over 200 screws on each side of the aircraft had to be done. And it takes quite a long time. Yeah. So it's just patience and trying not to break too many drills while you're doing it, and all that sort of thing. So yeah, that's that sort of thing why it takes quite a long time.
Yeah. Because it could take a really long time to do a car restoration, but it seems like nothing compared to how long it's taking to restore these planes back to their former glory.
Yes, and you have to be careful, of course, because on these planes, if you break something, you can't just go and buy a replacement for it.
Yes.
So you can't just get a big hammer and chisel out and break something off, because it's got to be put back on again. So yeah, you have to think about it. A lot of the aircraft, some of the bits on them were put on before the skin was put on the aircraft. So you can't take them off in the way they were put on. So you've got to think of a way round it.
Yeah.
And some of them must have had special tools, because, for example, when we were putting the engine back into the T-33, there was a hydraulic pipe underneath it that was fouling on the fuselage, so it wouldn't go in.
Right.
So you had to take that off in order to get the engine in, but you couldn't put it on when the engine was in. So you've got this quandary of what order do you do things in, and we don't have the specialist tools that they obviously must have had when these were operational. So it's thinking, how do you get around that sort of problem?
Yeah.
So yeah, it all keeps us busy and interested.
Keeps you very busy indeed.
Yeah.
When you're working on these kind of aeroplanes, what is your final goal with them? What do you want to achieve when these are all beautiful and stunning like this one next to us here?
I mean, the satisfying thing is when you see visitors come in here and their face lights up at seeing the aircraft. And that varies from people who've never been close to an aircraft of this sort, who think it's amazing, through to the people like, I think Dennis mentioned, the previous Lightning pilots who come and see it and say, well, you're making a magnificent job of this, it's really good to see. The T-33 is owned by the American Air Force Museum, so it's technically on loan to us.
Right.
But every year some of their people tour the entire UK, checking on the aircraft that they've loaned, and checking various things like radioactivity levels in the instruments and things like that.
Are they radioactive
to make sure
now?
No, this one's been checked, and you'll be pleased to know in East Anglia here is the lowest background radiation reading they've ever come across.
Well, that's handy.
Which is nice. But they said they thought we were doing a brilliant job of doing the T-33.
Oh, amazing.
So when you see the people like that who know what it involves in doing it, saying you're doing a good job, that's really satisfying.
Yeah, it must make
just
you
as
feel
much as
amazing.
somebody who, you know, has never seen something close and they think, wow, this is wonderful.
Yeah.
So
what would you say to anyone who's got a kind of engineering background? They don't know what they want to do. They want to kind of get more experience in other areas. Would you say this is something that they would enjoy?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, they can get involved in the museum, and then if they want to, they can come and help here under supervision if they've got the sort of background that's needed, which just basic, some mechanics, mechanical engineering, whatever, and common sense. And we've got one lad who comes to work with us just on a Sunday, who's in his mid-20s, and he works at one of the other places on site here. So he got no previous knowledge of aircraft, but he got a bit of a mechanical apprenticeship type background. and he's generally sort of getting involved. He helps on the Jaguar. One of the things with the Jaguar is when they do a taxi run, we get lots of people dressed up as aircraft maintainers and so on, and fitters, loading bombs on it and things, but they're all in their 40s, 50s and 60s, whereas the real people that would have done it for reality would have been in their 20s.
Yeah.
So Joe gets involved in that, so he looks like a real aircraft fitter and so on, of the right sort of age. So yeah, you can do that sort of thing as well as working on the aircraft. And it's important to get the younger people involved, because you know, as I think with most museums, a lot of the volunteers tend to be retired people who are always not going to be here forever, or people that are at work, they've got a day job, so they haven't got the time to do it.
Yeah.
So trying to encourage new people to come along is important.
Definitely, definitely. And I think it is an amazing job that you're doing, and it really warms my heart, because when I was younger, I always used to go to aeroplane museums with my granddad, because he absolutely loved it, all the things about the war, and he used to take me round, and it brings back so many memories to me, just coming in here and being around these aeroplanes and remembering the love that he had for them. I mean, my nan, she still has pictures of Spitfires and Hurricanes in the lounge, like the massive ones the size of the wall, because my granddad adored them so much. So coming in here makes me feel really happy.
Oh, that's good.
And it excites me, and I hope that other people can come here and have that same experience as well. And you guys are making that happen, which is amazing.
Certainly the people, because we've only started doing visits in here this year, and they've been really popular. People really enjoy coming and seeing the aeroplanes close to, and even just the smell of an aircraft hangar brings back memories for old pilots and so on, and so forth. So
definitely,
it's really good to see.
When I just went up and looked at Dennis's work up there, and the smell, it took me straight back to when I used to go to the museums with my granddad, and we got to sit in the aeroplanes. That smell instantly hits you, and it's like down memory lane. So it's really amazing.
Good.
So thank you guys so much for restoring these for us.
We enjoy it. That's good.
If you like this series, remember to follow us and leave us a review on the podcast platform that you use. It really helps us out.